Welcome to our presentation titled Behavior Management Coursework for Elementary Education Majors. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our presentation. We hope you find the information helpful as you consider the ways in which elementary education majors are prepared to support students who engage in challenging behavior. For the presentation today, we are going to start off by providing a little background about ourselves. We will then jump into the problem related to pre-service elementary education teacher training, what a possible solution is, and what next steps might be moving forward. We have two presenters here today, and we are both from the University of Illinois, Urbana, Champaign. First, we have Stacy McGuire, who just finished her PhD in special education from Illinois. And we also have Rebecca Folkerts, who is going into her third year in special education, also at Illinois.
All right, so to get started, we want to start out with what is the problem? What we see in schools and with teacher preparation is that prior to the pandemic, maybe not surprisingly, students engaged in challenging behavior, particularly in elementary education classrooms, which is our focus. Since the pandemic started and after students returned to schools, teachers have been reporting an increase in these challenging behaviors exhibited by students. Because of that, there's been a need for more social emotional learning, and students have been requiring more intensive and individualized behavioral supports. Multiple researchers have reported on the challenging behaviors that teachers have seen in their classrooms. So some of these might include physical and verbal aggression, non-compliance, disruption, defiance, and I'm sure many others. These behaviors can impact pre-service teachers during their student teaching placements as well. They often report not being adequately prepared to support students with challenging behavior. For example, one pre-service teacher in a recent research study shared, well, we never had a specific class on behavior management. I had a class that was specifically about classroom management, but it wasn't specifically about students with poor behavior. It was just classroom management as a whole and how to run a classroom in an effective manner. That last quote mentioned brings both classroom management and behavior management. So what we need to discuss is the difference between two of these, which is what that student was describing. The difference between these depend on what type of support the teacher is providing and who is receiving that support. So when discussing classroom management, we typically think of the teacher providing behavior support for all students in the classroom. This is sometimes referred to as tier 1 or universal supports. And with classroom management, we usually think about using preventative strategies to prevent or avoid the use of more intensive or individualized supports. If there are students in a classroom who are not responding to these strategies used with the whole class, then they need more specific behavior management. With behavior management, a teacher provides behavior support to a small group of students or to an individual student, and this might be called tier 2 supports or tier 3 or intensive and individualized supports. So in this situation, we're using several strategies that are based on individual needs of that student or of students in a small group.
So thinking about the difference between classroom and behavior management, and the ways that pre-service and in-service teachers are prepared to support students as a whole and individually, we conducted a systematic literature review exploring the training that teachers have received. First, we're going to go ahead and look at the training that pre-service teachers have received. When specifically looking at classroom management training, which would include management strategies used with a whole class of students, we found that most of their coursework focused on the classroom management instruction instead of behavior management. However, this instruction was infused into other courses as opposed to being a standalone course. So what this means is instead of having a specific course dedicated to classroom management, they were taking courses that focused on other topics And then while taking those courses, they also discuss topics related to classroom management. We have found through research that pre-service teachers learn classroom management strategies best when they have an opportunity to take a standalone classroom management course. When we look at behavior management, or the management strategies teachers use with individual students who are engaging in challenging behavior, we found that pre-service teachers received minimal coursework dedicated to individual student needs. So in fact, when we conducted this systematic review, we could not find any studies that focused specifically on pre-service teachers and behavior management. Instead, most of the studies that we found focused on classroom management, which was minimal at best. So next, we're going to talk about the training that in-service teachers receive related to classroom management strategies. So in this systematic review, we found that several studies indicated teachers were receiving training related to classroom management. For the most part, in-service teachers receive school-wide trainings where all of the staff come together to be trained on classroom management strategies. If teachers need any individual follow-up, for example, if they're struggling to implement some of the strategies they learned in that school-wide training, that is not always provided. And then when we looked at behavior management training, what we found was most of the behavior management training teachers received was provided in small groups or to individual teachers through research studies provided by universities. And teachers reported that they needed more help with managing the challenging behavior that students engaged in. So in other words, students are continuing to engage in challenging behavior and at even higher rates since returning to school after the pandemic. And yet teachers are not prepared to support students because of limited opportunities to engage in meaningful coursework and continued professional development. So following the systematic literature review, we conducted focus group interviews with 15 pre-service elementary education teachers. All 15 participants were in the middle of their student teaching placements, which means that they had already completed their college coursework, had participated in practicum placements, and then were in the middle of their student teaching placements. Participants discussed their knowledge, experiences, and needs related to behavior management. And findings from the focus group interviews revealed that they did not know how to support students who engaged in challenging behaviors. And when they had a student who engaged in challenging behavior, they usually went to professionals in the school, such as a school psychologist or social worker. Many of the participants reported that they felt like the cooperating teacher or their university supervisor were both really helpful in providing ideas to help them with classroom management, but not always helpful when it came to supporting them in understanding how to help individual students with behavior management. They also found that social media was helpful and reported going to places like Pinterest or TikTok to find strategies to support students with challenging behavior. And then they also wondered why challenging behaviors occurred, and sometimes attributed the challenging behavior to things like a difficult home life or possibly even a disability such as ADHD or a learning disability. Only one participant was able to state the behavior served a communicative function. Participants also discussed the ways in which the pandemic impacted their student teaching placements. Some of them, for some of them, their placements were fully remote, others were fully in person, and for the rest, they student taught in hybrid classrooms where some students were in person and some students were remote. Those participants who student taught in a fully remote setting shared they did not feel they saw many challenging behaviors other than students unmuting themselves to say something inappropriate or closing their laptop when they felt like they were frustrated. Those student teachers who were in person said they saw many other challenging behaviors, such as physical or verbal aggression. They also shared that it was difficult to understand how best to respond to the behaviors because they had to maintain social distancing, which made it difficult to use strategies such as proximity to support a student. They felt like they often were relying on simply calling out students if they were engaging in inappropriate behavior, instead of relying on more positive reinforcement that they knew would be helpful. And they all requested additional training that focused on building a tool belt of strategies to support students who were engaging in challenging behavior in the classroom, because they really did not feel like they were prepared to enter their first year of teaching. So when we look at what has worked best in the past, we see that pre-service teachers who have taken a standalone course that incorporated a practicum experience have shown increases in self-efficacy. And similarly, newly graduated teachers who completed a behavior management training showed significant increases in both knowledge of behavior management strategies and confidence in implementing those behavior management strategies. And then most recently, we conducted a study with teachers in their first 3 years of teaching. And in that study, participants completed a behavior management training, and findings revealed that they showed significant increases in knowledge of behavior management strategies and confidence in implementing those strategies. And their students showed significant decreases in problem behaviors as well. It is possible that if pre-service teachers participated in a standalone course dedicated to both classroom and behavior management, they could have increases in their knowledge, confidence, and self-efficacy.
So with all of that in mind, there are a few suggestions that we have for improving state policies moving forward. But currently there's 45 states that require elementary education majors to take coursework related to classroom management. However, that coursework can be taken in any format. So that may or may not be a standalone course. So we suggest that all states and territories consider implementing policies requiring all elementary education majors to take coursework, specific classes related to classroom management. Next, right now, 28 states have policies in place that state the classroom management courses elementary education majors are taking should include research-based practices. We are recommending new state policies be considered in all states and territories that implement instruction focusing on evidence-based practices. And finally, as of now, there's only 3 states that require instruction about responding to appropriate behavior and 4 states that require instruction about responding to inappropriate behavior. So we encourage all states and territories to consider implementing policies that provide standalone courses dedicated to both classroom and behavior management strategies. These policy changes will be helpful in supporting elementary education teachers as they learn to support their classes as a whole and individual students. However, it's just as important that they understand how to implement the strategies that they're learning in the classroom. Therefore, we also recommend states consider implementing policies that will require the addition of practicum experiences along with standalone classroom and behavior management courses. By doing this, pre-service teachers can learn the theories behind the evidence-based strategies they're learning and then actually practice the strategies with students in real time.
So after listening to this information, go ahead and take some time to reflect on what you have heard. How can you help pre-service elementary education teachers support students with challenging behavior? Do you think there are additional policy changes that need to occur related to teacher training and student behavior? What key takeaways do you have from this presentation? To answer these questions, you can follow the QR code on your screen or go to the link on your screen. Both will take you to a Padlet where you can respond to the questions, respond to others' responses, or like others' responses. You can go ahead and pause the recording at this time so you have a chance to participate in the discussion. Thank you for listening to our presentation. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out. You can contact Stacy McGuire at stacynm2@illinois.edu.